All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming to this week's weather briefing. Today we have Dave Dombek from AccuWeather, and he's going to be talking, he said, a little bit about Thanksgiving and what's happened the past several years. So thank you, Dave.
Hey. Thank you, Andy, and thanks again once again for the opportunity to come over here and do the map discussion. I usually try to do the weather briefing here once a semester. Usually I try to come toward the latter part of fall semester and then again in the spring. So you'll see me probably in about late March or April or so. But I'm glad to be here. And obviously we're going to talk, we actually have some weather. It's not just like, oh, la-di-da boring weather, although it's boring, but it's nice out there, certainly today and the next couple of days. And we actually do have some weather to talk about this upcoming weekend. But before we do that, if anybody's been to my presentations before, what I usually try to do is have some little twist on something other than just the current weather, and then we'll get into the current weather. So that's usually my format. And so with that said, we're going to get into it. Just wanted to review some climatology. And it's a good thing no matter where you're forecasting for. I always advise newer forecasters, make sure you're in touch with the climatology of the location where you are forecasting. Of course, here we're at State College, but that's those two things. Geography, very, very important. Especially if you've never forecasted for a location ever. That's your first time ever. Look at maps, look at topo maps, look at the geography, the layout of the land, and obviously look at the climatology. The climatology gives you, like for today, the normals, you know, what it normally does, where it should be this time of year. And of course, the records give you the bounds of the atmosphere at that location, that time of the year. So with that said, so far this month, in November, we don't have today's data in, obviously, but we're running, no surprise, considerably warmer than normal, 4.3 degrees above, and also a pretty dry month, only about 26% of normal precip this month. If you go back to the beginning of fall, astronomical autumn, we're looking at plus 2.2 degrees with 91% of normal precip. We did have a couple of bigger events in there with long stretches of relatively dry weather. The normals.
Just a quick question: why are you using astronomical fall and not meteorological?
Just because I picked that.
Oh,
yeah, and that's a very good question, Marissa. And really, when it comes down to temperatures, that is really more important. You know, the meteorological seasons are really, they follow the temperature curve. That's what it is all about. So I could get that. I don't have it right with me, but that's just what I happened to pick. So good question. Today, 49.34. That's about where we should be. In 1 month from today, we're still in that time of the year now where the normals are crashing at a pretty quick pace. If you don't keep up with them, it's very easy to get out of touch with reality. If you don't check those normals over a couple of week period, it's like, whoa, that's, you know, it's like a reality check where we really should be. And they're still falling basically about every 3 days, the normal high and low drop a degree. It starts to level off once you get into about the first or second week of December. But 37.24 in 1 month from today is where we should be. Now, since there's been some talk, and there will be some talk about snow, you know, I look back over the past 5 years. I just took a data sample of 5 years, went back, and I looked at both the first trace of snow for State College and also the first measurable snow. So last year, October 18th, it's like, well, we're getting off to a good start here, and look at what happened. Pretty much a dud of a winter here for the most part. Just south of here was a little different story. 2014, November 7th, 2013, October 24th, and 2012, November 12th. 2011, get this, October 1st. That was pretty amazing. And then we saw what happened in that winter of 2011, 2012. That was a real dud of a winter, only 19 inches of snow, and we ended up the winter season at about 3.7 degrees above normal that winter. So it's a very mild winter, if you remember that one. As for the first measurable snow, last year you had to go all the way, you had to go past December, you had to go into January to get our first inch of snow, our first measurable snow. We got an inch on January 12th this past winter. 2014, we had 4.1 inches on the 26th. 2013, a 1/10 of an inch on the 11th. 2012, the 3/10 of an inch on the 26th. And then again, that 2011 sort of stands out there. It's like, wow, we're getting the first trace, the first measurable 3 inches of snow on, you know, on the 29th of October. But yet that winter was pretty snowless overall. Now, Thanksgiving Day, of course, that's how they figure it out. It's a floating holiday as far as the dates go. The earliest it could be is the 22nd. The latest it could be is the 28th of November. That's pretty much your range. And it's always the fourth Thursday in November. And a pretty big range in weather. We could all, probably each of us, have stories about November Thanksgivings that we could remember in the past on either side of the extremes. And two that kind of stand out, or one really stands out as far as the snow and cold end of things, was back in 1971. I was actually in 8th grade, Dallas, Pennsylvania, up in Northeast PA. Anybody know where Dallas is? Nobody. I know you would. you definitely would. Northeastern PA, it's kind of up by the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. Our elevation about 1,300 feet, actually pretty similar to what it is around here. But that storm, and I was looking at some of the data on this just yesterday, that same storm that dumped 27 inches of snow where we live there in Dallas, produced a little over an inch of rain in Central Park, New York City, and they also had a 63-mile-per-hour wind gust. So obviously the setup there was a pretty strong coastal storm that we were just cold enough during that storm, and we ended up with mostly snow. I think it started off as just a little bit of a mix, and then it just thumped. It was a very wet snow. We lost power. We didn't even get plowed out until the next day. That Friday, probably about noontime or so, we got plowed out. We did not have Thanksgiving dinner that day because my grandparents, they lived down in Wilkes-Barre in the valley, and they had the turkey, they had all the stuff, and so we ended up eating sandwiches, I think tuna fish sandwiches, and we had our Thanksgiving dinner that Saturday after the storm. And I could also remember some very balmy, very nice, temperatures up in the 60s on Thanksgiving Day.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. Was that the storm that made you want to get into weather?
No, I was already fully into it, head first by then. But that was certainly one of the ones that kept my interest going big time. And I mean, I'm definitely the weather weenie. Plus, I started keeping track of the snowfall where we lived there. I think it started in either 3rd or 4th grade. And measure the snow, mark it down, tally it up for this. I still have that notebook sitting up in a box up in my attic. So I was pretty much already I'd say by 3rd, 4th grade I was weather weenie plus, but that was just another thing that just accentuated that love for the weather that I had. Thanksgiving Day here in State College, the past 5 years, definitely quite a bit of variation when you look back. Just last year was really nice, 55, 43, a dry day. Back in 2014, we had a little bit of snow, 3/10, and it was a pretty cold day, 34 for the high, down to 25 for the low. Of the past 5 years, 2013 really stands out as being by far the coldest. Only a trace of snow that day, but a very cold day. It stayed in the 20s. We had some very stable cold air over top of us for several days that week, and it just didn't want to leave. 2012, a nice day, 57, and dry, and back in 2011, it was 49, 36, and also dry. So we also have another holiday coming up for anybody that's lived in Pennsylvania for any amount of time, and those like myself who, born and raised in Pennsylvania. The Monday after Thanksgiving it's not an official holiday, but it kind of is. It's the opening of deer season, rifle season in Pennsylvania. You get away from Philadelphia, get away from Pittsburgh, even just outside of Pittsburgh, I'm sure. But a good part of Pennsylvania, it's kind of like a holiday. I mean, schools are closed, some 1 day, some 2 days. Kids don't have school, teachers don't have school, at least on that first day. Some of the businesses closed. I know the people who collect our garbage, they normally come on Mondays. I'll guarantee you we'll be setting our garbage out next Saturday. They'll collect it early because they're not going to work on the opening day of deer season. It's going to be closed that day. So the weather is very important, you know, for doing campus weather service. If you have any radios, anybody you're talking to that you're dealing in Pennsylvania, that Monday after Thanksgiving obviously is a very important day weather-wise, because you've got hundreds of thousands of folks out hunting that day throughout Pennsylvania. I actually have a write-up. I brought it with me. I didn't make any copies. If anybody's interested, I kind of go through point by point all the, you know, how weather affects deer hunting. So if anybody's interested in that, you can run off some copies. I have a hard copy of it. I'm not going to go through all that stuff now, but to summarize, like if I had to get my ideal day, I've been a hunter. I've been hunting with my dad many years, since I was 12 years old. So it's just part of my life, again, growing up in Pennsylvania. But if I had to pick the ideal weather for deer hunting, it would be dry, obviously not precipitating, maybe not bright sunshine. Sometimes it gets too sunny, and with the low sun angle, it's almost too bright. Maybe like some mix of clouds and sun. Temperatures kind of chilly, but not terribly cold. Maybe starting off first thing in the morning, 28, 30, and maybe end up with near 40 in the afternoon. And a couple of inches of fresh snow on the ground, not crusty old stale snow that's been there for a week and a half or so, but fresh snow that maybe just fell like the day before, the night before. And winds, definitely, when you're out hunting, it's nice to have it just calm or very light winds rather than having howling winds blowing. So that's kind of my ideal setup, and the ideal almost never happens. But that, if I had to choose it, if I had to order it, that would be the weather that I would pick. Going forward, what can we expect? Obviously, it's pretty noticeable what we're having today. Just a gorgeous day out there today. Beautiful late fall weather. Tomorrow is going to be even better. Lots of sunshine again like today, but we've got temperatures considerably higher tomorrow afternoon than what we have today. Well above normal. We're probably, tomorrow's record is 73 degrees, set in 1958. I think that record does stand, but we're going to be within several degrees of it, and it's conceivable we could be within 1 or 2 of that record tomorrow afternoon. We've got a transition day on Saturday, some afternoon showers coming in, rain showers, and then of course sharply colder, windy the second half of the weekend. It's going to look and feel more like early to mid December by the time we get to Sunday and into Monday. And I would say we have a good chance of our first accumulation of snow. When I say accumulation, I mean like actually measurable snow, and it might be minimal, but I think we actually have a legitimate shot of actually getting more than a trace this time. We may. It's not a slam dunk, but we at least have a chance of getting our first measurable. Thanksgiving week, you get past this weekend. Overall, generally a chillier week, start to finish. Overall, you average it out than what we have this week. Pretty cold start, very cold start actually, and then some moderation midweek. A little bit chillier toward the end of the week again. And it does look like we've got a period of some wet weather. It should be wet as opposed to white or icy, because I think there's going to be enough moderation ahead of this system. Sometime late Wednesday night. May not be a whole lot of rain, but I think we do get some rain out of that. Might spill over some into Thanksgiving Day. And looking at the country, of course, that's a huge travel day. I'm trying to think of the areas of the country that maybe would be most greatly impacted by any adverse weather, especially if you're flying. Pacific Northwest, there's another system coming in at that time. Portland, Seattle, if you're flying into any of those places in the Northwest, perhaps. The upper Midwest, the northern Great Lakes, it looks like with that next system coming out, there's likely to be on the northern end of that storm, probably some wintry weather, some snow and so forth. And then maybe a few hubs in the south. If you look at the setup there, with the cold front trailing out of that, there might be a line of showers. Perhaps there could be some embedded thunder with that as well. I didn't really study that, but I could see a line of showers and thunderstorms across some of the southern hubs as that front goes through. Here, Thanksgiving Day, it looks chilly, maybe in the 40s. Probably some rain showers around, maybe some wet snowflakes. Looks very marginal. with the thicknesses in the 850s, the boundary layer temps look relatively mild. Doesn't look terribly cold, but probably somewhere in the 40s. So weather that would be not that far out of the ordinary for what you would expect for Thanksgiving. And of course, Thanksgiving being an indoor holiday, it's not really as critical, the Thanksgiving Day weather, as it is the day before. A lot of people traveling. Now, one of the things I was looking at, I was really amazed here how much the heights, the 500 millibar heights, change here over the next few days. And if you look at this column over here, this is the thicknesses. This is off of the Euro. I just happened to get a snapshot here, a little screenshot. And this is off of the 0Z run of the Euro. And these are the heights in this column. So, you know, you look at this morning, okay, 566. But look at where they end up here tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, by the end of the day, tomorrow, 18Z and 0Z, 581. I mean, you know, do the math on that. That's a tremendous amount of height rises going on. What's that? That's like, what, 210 meter height rises in the next, basically from now until tomorrow afternoon, the next 24 hours. But then look at what happens as you go beyond the apex of the ridge. Really reaches us tomorrow. There's a system bombing out in the Atlantic. The ridge builds in. It's really just right over us. The axis of the ridge is over us tomorrow afternoon. And then look at how the heights just crash here this weekend. You know, we start off here tomorrow evening at 581, and look at where we are by the time you get to Sunday. You know, late Saturday night and Sunday. Look at that. The heights just absolutely just tanking here. So tremendous up and down motion here with the heights, just big changes coming up. And anytime you see height falls, I mean, height rises, height fall, but height falls really should be like almost like a red flag that something pretty major is going to happen here. You can't have that amount of height falls and like expect nothing to happen, especially in a short period of time. We've got the satellites looping up here, but that just did a quick snapshot here of this morning. This is the enhanced IR satellite shot from this morning. Obviously, you could see out in the middle part of the country, in the Rockies, and that's your system that's going to be affecting us here this weekend. Big area of just nice quiet weather across a good chunk of the country, and there's that system that's off the East Coast, and a lot of the models are actually developing that system into a pretty good low over the next day or day and a half or so. So that wimpy little thing that came through here, that short wave that managed to, what did we get, a trace, Bill, officially here? And I think I saw some of the co-op reports, 200s, 300s, a little bit of rain it squeezed out of that thing yesterday and last evening. That's offshore, but that's actually going to develop into a pretty good storm out in the ocean. And it's because of that system out there that the ridge is getting pumped up west of it for the next day and a half or so. Composite radar this morning, again, very quiet. The nation's midsection, as you get over into the east, that's where your issues are farther west. This was the 13Z. This is the surface pressure analysis. I wouldn't expect your students to be analyzing every 1/10 of a millibar, Bill. That's a little bit extreme. So the gradient here is going to look stronger than what it really is, but it very easily you could pick out the, see where the high is. You see the gradient. It's still pretty breezy. Even out here, there was a little bit of a breeze, and I noticed what we had to do. And in my forecasting shift today, I always look at New York City, and we had to beef up the wind speeds a little bit for today, and actually put the word breezy in the forecast, like 8 to 16, maybe some gusts 20 to 25. So you got a pretty decent gradient as you get over toward New York City and into New England, east of that high and behind the departing low out in the ocean. And then you go farther west, you got quite a bit of gradient there out in the Midwest. And this time of year, for it to get warm, it's not going to get warm just all by itself. I mean, you could get pretty mild, but to really get the extreme warmth this time of year with the low sun angle, you got to move the air. You got to have a breeze blowing, and that's why, like tomorrow, I think out west of the mountains, they're going to do very well with the temperatures. We'll do pretty well here, but they're going to even do better out there. 850 millibar temps again kind of shows the picture. Just a hint of a little bit of chill in the northeast not much. You could just call for November standards, mid-November, just call that cool. A couple of pockets of 0 or lower, but mostly it's above that. Your nice surge of warmth up in the Midwest there, middle part of the country, some pretty warm air aloft. You look at that, that's +5, 10, even +15. And then, of course, your pool of colder air north and west of the storm center. 700 millibar, again, no brainer. It shows where there's a lot of dry air. There's your 500 from 12Z today. There's your system that's out near Cape Cod, getting ready to push offshore. And there's your ridge pumping up the axis of that ridge back in eastern Michigan and coming into Ohio, the Ohio Valley there early this morning. And there's your system out in the west. It's a pretty healthy system at this stage, and you're going to see, we'll look at the animator later, we'll see the progression of this short wave. It's going to do its classic, you know, it's pretty positively tilted or positive to maybe neutral at best in the short term. Over time, it's going to tilt more negative, and then it's eventually going to close off as it gets somewhere over the northeast this weekend. There's your 250 millibar winds. You're looking at some upper level winds there, and you can see that very strong jet streak coming into the western states there, kind of digging into that system. I was looking at the SPC. Today, you got a few little areas. I'm kind of concentrating mostly on tomorrow, and you know, it looks like we're probably just under criteria. We'll have to see. This was this morning's. They do in fact, the new outlook is probably in now, usually around 1630 or 17Z. SPC does their updated outlook for the convective outlooks, and so we'll see if that's changed at all, if they've changed the orientation or beefed any of that up to, you know, beyond a marginal. But that's certainly a zone where I think there can be and probably will be some convection tomorrow during that 24-hour period starting at 12Z tomorrow. This is one of our graphics. This is going to be obviously a pretty major weather event for the Northern Plains. And I saw a snapshot of basically, I think it was like 3 days ago, the snow cover across the country, how minimal that was back on like Monday, even Tuesday. That's going to change some. It's changing as we speak, you know, in the Rockies, the Great Basin area out there, and definitely as you get up into the Northern Plains, and then later in the period, downwind of the lakes, into the Appalachian, the upslope areas, and in New England. So we're going to add considerably more snow cover on that U.S. map than what I saw just a couple of days ago. But this is the zone here that's probably going to be dealing with some of the heaviest amounts of snow. This is a graphic that we had. We made that at AccuWeather here early this morning, and our zone that's probably there across northern Minnesota might be the bullseye, might be the areas, the best chance, I would say, for, you know, upwards to a foot or even greater amounts. But it's probably going to be a close call, very close call in Minneapolis. They're going to be near the gradient, a lot less to the southeast, and quite a bit more increasing amounts as you go north and west of Minneapolis. And for what it's worth, now this is, I could have gotten all the models. I just did a snapshot of the 0Z run of the Euro. This is the European snowfall totals through 12Z Monday in the Northeast. And you can see, and it kind of makes sense. It really, what I'm seeing there, and that's quite a bit different for those of you who have followed the trend on the Euro over the past few days. It was maybe 48 hours ago or maybe less. It was looking a lot more impressive on the operational run of the Euro. The ensembles were a lot less threatening looking, and over time, and in the GFS, of course, was less threatening looking, and everything is sort of gelled now toward a solution that actually looked very much along the lines of climatology, what you would expect with a storm this time of year, running up into the lakes and trying to secondary at some point late in the game, probably up in New England, maybe southern New England, come early Sunday morning. But obviously, you're pinpointing the areas downwind of the lakes. I suspect that, and I was talking to our snow warning guys this morning, the folks who actually are forecasting for some of our Department of Transportation clients and our municipalities, townships, boroughs, and they're part of our operation there. And I think they're basically going with kind of like a 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 inch amounts in those areas downwind of Lake Erie. But local amounts, I suspect, will be in the double digits. I think you're going to get some 10, 12 inch amounts or maybe greater, depending on how steady state you could keep the bands going. The classic, I think we're going to have the Allegheny front effect here, being on this side of the Allegheny front, the downsloping that happens. And yes, we will see. I'd be shocked. I'd eat my hat if we don't see some snowflakes out of this pattern. I think we have a legitimate shot of whitening the ground at some point. Maybe it is just going to come in as 1/10 of an inch. It could come in more. I think we would have to get some kind of a Lake Huron connection, some kind of a help from maybe some Lake Huron connection at some point. Maybe that doesn't happen until like Sunday night. So let's say from the overnight hours, early pre-dawn hours on Sunday through Monday morning, at some point in there, my feeling is that we've got a pretty good chance of getting our first measurable snow, but it may not be a real lot to get excited about. And speaking of the lakes, there's potential. I think you would have to maintain a little bit more steady state nature to this, but I was looking at the thermodynamic aspect of this, and this is pretty impressive. This morning, I was looking at the Cleveland Weather Service, and if you look at their marine forecast, it's nice they actually do the temperature off of Lake Erie, off of Erie, Toledo, and Cleveland. And so I checked Erie, and the water temperature off of Erie this morning was 53. So let's just say 52 is about 11 plus 11 Celsius. But let's even just say that with the cold air coming in this weekend, that lake temperature drops a couple of degrees, which it probably will between now and Monday. Let's even say it gets down to 50. That's like plus 10. The 850 millibar temps this weekend, depending on which model you believe, they are forecast to drop into that range, -9, -10, by the end of the day, Sunday night. So, do the math on that, plus 10 to -10, you're talking about a 20-degree temperature difference in Celsius between the lake surface and 850. 13 being the magic number. You got to get at least 13 degrees Celsius difference to get a lake effect, get lake effect snow, and anything above and beyond that, all the better. So I'm looking at the potential at some point there for about a 20-degree spread, which is pretty impressive. In this setup, I think the Allegheny Plateau, the upslope areas, that air is moist, it's cold, and you're blowing it uphill. And so it doesn't take rocket science to figure out that the areas that are upsloping with that northwest flow are going to do quite well. Over the Allegheny Plateau, the Laurel Highlands especially, higher areas around Johnstown and down into Somerset County, and that they should do very, very well in a setup like that. Like I said, around here, the typical downsloping ripoff, you're probably looking at, maybe an inch at most if we really got lucky, and probably more like a coating, a 1/10 of an inch, something like that. Again, watch for some kind of a weird, I call it a Huron connection. That is the one thing, sort of the wild card, I guess, that could give us a little bit more snow. You get that weird connection for a couple of hours, a several-hour period, and then what looks to be, it's like we're ready to throw the towel in, ready to give up on any snow here at all, and we wake up Monday morning and there's a 1/2 inch or an inch of snow on the ground. I guess something strange like that could happen. So that's something to watch for. Look at a couple of soundings. Anybody that's watched my presentations before knows that I like to look at soundings. I look at soundings every day, being a forecaster. So any students, if this stuff seems so, it's like, why do we have to look at soundings? Look at them. They're so important. Use them. I use them every day as a forecaster for many different reasons. So anyway, this is, I pulled this sounding off of the Euro, the 0Z run of the Euro. This is for State College tomorrow at 18Z. And notice, it's just a nice sunny day. And that's the pretty obvious. You could get that and take away from that very easily. It's a beautiful day, very dry. But also look at it's also very stable. Remember, the heights are very high tomorrow. They're peaking at about 580, 581, and there's we've got this ridge over top of us, so you would expect it to be very stable. And the inversion, the mixing layer, is going to be pretty shallow. It's not going to be a real deep mixing layer tomorrow, and indeed it is. It's that 950 maybe is about where we're mixing from tomorrow afternoon. Now, so you say, well, is it really going to get as warm as what we're forecasting here? Is it going to be too stable? It's just not going to, be nicer if we were mixing from 850. Yes, but let's just do some math on that. If you're mixing from 950, my rule of thumb for here, for sea level, you could add about 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. If it's dry, you've got some sun, lots of sun, even better. But you could, for State College, given the fact that we're over 1,000 feet, about 1,100 feet in elevation, you could usually add about, a good rule of thumb, about 5 or 6 degrees Celsius off of the 950 millibar temperature to estimate what our high temperature would be. So I started looking at that. At the 18Z, what the temperatures were progged to be at that level by the different models. And they were all very consistent. Euro plus 15, NAM plus 16 Celsius, GFS plus 15. They're all right in that range. Very good agreement with the models. So let's do a conservative estimate on that. Let's say, instead of adding 6, let's only add 5. And instead of taking 16, let's take 15. 15 and 5, 20 Celsius, that's 68 here tomorrow. Let's be a little more aggressive on our estimate. Let's pick that higher number of 16. And now instead of adding 5 degrees, mixing down from 950, let's add 6. That's coming up to 22. 22, that's 72 Fahrenheit. So that's within 1 degree of our record here tomorrow. So certainly I think that record does stand, but I think we're going to be within a few degrees of it, several degrees, and we could be within 1 or 2 of it. Bottom line, tomorrow is going to be a warm day. It's going to be a beautiful day. So any chance you have, get out and enjoy it, because things are going to change quite a bit. Now here's our sounding. Speaking of soundings, this is snapshot at 18Z on Sunday. And of course tomorrow, I said tomorrow, that should say Sunday. That's a typo on my part. But look at the difference there, how that's a very unstable, very well mixed atmosphere all the way past 850. You're actually going all the way to 800, and you got a lot of wind, got a very well aligned flow that day. See how all the flow is blowing out of the northwest at all levels, so you're going to get good downward transfer that day. So looking at that sounding, knowing how unstable it is here on Sunday, I think there's a high probability that we're going to have some very gusty winds here, very strong gusty winds. It looks like almost a no-brainer. We got a good pressure gradient. Remember, we've got the primary low that tracks up into Ontario and Quebec, and then your secondary low forms maybe over Connecticut, Massachusetts, somewhere there, and then the two will phase and merge, and you'll have some merged low by Sunday afternoon sitting up near Quebec City, and a good strong pressure gradient out of the northwest behind that as that low deepens up there. So you've got the pressure gradient in place. You've got a well-aligned flow from the surface right on up. Everything's blowing out of the same direction. And so that's a classic case, being very unstable like that. That's a classic case of being able to mix that air, those stronger winds down from aloft. And I was looking at some of the winds here, and this is off of the Euro. Again, some of the models are even stronger than this with the winds. But take a look at, this is for State College, look at 12Z, 18Z, Sunday, 0Z Monday, and go down the column there for 925, and then you go down the column there for 850. I mean, you're seeing some pretty strong winds there. So I would say, could we conceivably get a wind gust past 50 miles per hour at some point here on Sunday? I'd say that's certainly not out of the question. I think 40 to 45 is almost a given. It's almost a no-brainer, in my opinion. with the wind gust, the peak wind gust here. I mean, away from any protected areas. Obviously, if you live down in some little bowl or gully somewhere and you're protected from the winds or you're surrounded by trees, that might be a different story. But I'm talking anywhere open, anywhere exposed to the wind, we should do very well with the wind gusts here. So as far as a recap of the forecast, and we'll get into some of the maps. So let's look at the animator here in a second. Beautiful this afternoon. Pretty much that's a given. A chilly night tonight, light winds, dry air, clear skies. So we got a pretty good range in low temperatures. I live out east of Bellefonte, out near Zion, in an area where it's a classic radiational cooling spot. Typically, on a night like tonight, I'll run anywhere from 8 or 9 to maybe as many as 12 degrees colder than what it is here in State College. So while the low in State College might be 35, 36, I'll probably be 25 out my way tonight. So big range in the lows. Again, great day tomorrow, pleasant, lots of sunshine. I think we've got temperatures approaching 70. I think we're at least up to 68, and I could see how we're 70 or 71, 72 if everything worked out right tomorrow. Saturday, transitional day. I think we'll start with some sun, and then it'll morph into a mostly cloudy day as the front arrives from the west. Pretty good breeze blowing that day. It's not as warm, but how high we go with those temperatures, we're starting off with a pretty mild night, a very balmy night tomorrow night. So our launching pad on Saturday morning is pretty high. And so we don't have that far to go, and depending on how quickly that moisture gets here with the front and the actual fropa, that'll determine how high we go. I'd like our 58 right now, upper 50s. I wouldn't be surprised if we reached 60 briefly on Saturday, and then we drop off pretty quickly then come Saturday night. We'll probably get some showers. It doesn't look like that wet of a system. Maybe we can get a tenth or two. It doesn't look like it's a really wet system coming in. And then Sunday, obviously very windy, much colder, sharply colder. Some flurries and snow showers around. Maybe it gets to 40 or 41, but I think the flavor of the day, just for effect, it's going to be upper 30s, 38, 39. And it's probably going to feel like it's in the 20s when you combine where the temperatures are with the winds. I'd say we're probably looking at winds averaging 20 to 30, 35, and I think we're going to get some gusts at 45 to 50 and maybe even stronger. So that is...
We're actually out of time.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions really quick for Dave here before we move on? No? Well, thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Next week we're on break, so there will be no weather briefing, and then we'll come back. And Rich Grum will be the last week, and then we'll have one more person from AccuWeather the week before.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I didn't realize it was. We pretty much covered everything.
Yeah,
I was just a matter of looking at the current models.
I don't disagree. Did you hear what I was covering? I don't know if you were on phone.
I was, yeah, but just I thought, but like, I agree. So it's like it could be climatology, ripped off.
Yep.
Probably measure something.
Yeah, probably measure something.
I'll show you something.
Oh, yeah.
Just based on what you were talking about.